Let's understand and decode the Gen Z, understand the habit and behavior of the next generation. I would like to request the moderator, Mr. Girish Menon. He has 25 years of experience in merger and acquisition strategy and counseling, with specialization in media, digital marketing, gaming, and consumer internet sector. I would request him to please join us and help us with the session, moderate us for the Gen Z understanding the habit and behavior of next generation.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much, Madhurima. Today, we are trying to have an interesting conversation, talking a bit about Gen Z demographics in particular, right? And I think we've heard all through the last couple of hours in every conversation, uh, Gen Z audiences keeps coming up and keeps getting repeated. And I thought, this is a good segue into that. And for that conversation, I've got a set of very interesting, diverse set of people here. And let me, invite them on stage, please. Dr. Shrisha Sathe, she's a psychologist, counselor, and consultant. And I'm hoping that we will get some insights into Gen Z behavior patterns. When we talk to her. We've also got Piyush Kumar, founder at Router, which is among the largest gaming streaming platforms in India, and hopefully hear from him as to the next destination of where consumers are actually going to consume content. I would also like to invite Amit Wadhwa, CEO Dentsu. Amit? Hey, Amit. Hi. Amit's got more than 22 years of experience being a passionate brand builder, and is, like I said, CEO at Dentsu. And again, Gen Z audiences are something which are very, very critical for brands to engage with, and also probably the most complex. And would love to hear your thoughts on it as we move along. And finally, Santosh Pacheti, Director Esports at 7C Esports. Santosh, would love to have you here as we talk about the gaming ecosystem and engaging with the Gen Z audiences on that. Given again, that's probably one big area where Gen Z users tend to spend a lot of their time, and I think that is really the panel that we have for you today. And thanks so much everybody for taking the time out. And as we start this conversation, right, I wanted to maybe spend 5 minutes laying the context, right? So there's a veritable alphabet soup out there with Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta. I think we are going to pretty soon run out of alphabets. But here's the thing, right? Why is this an important conversation to have? Two perspectives I wanted to bring into play, right? Firstly, just some statistics to sort of lay the ground. In India, there's about 375 million Gen Z population, right? And the way we are defining Gen Z population is people born between 1997 to 2010. So roughly 12 to 25 year age bracket is what we are sort of talking about. Definitions vary, but broadly we are in that range, right? Uh, and if you talk about the next gen of people coming in, what is the so-called Gen Alpha, right? People born after 2011, that number is 230 million in India, right? So we are talking a 500, 600 million base of users who are going to evolve, some of them are already here, some of them want to come up, who probably behave very, very differently from the earlier generations, right? And just to lay the context as to why this becomes even more critical is this is pervasive, right? So we've got, out of the 375 million, almost half is female. Only 45 to 50 million of these users are actually from top 10 cities. So bulk of these people actually reside outside the top 10 cities, right? So the complexity in India, any which ways, the whole India Bharat story anyways is a complex equation. To that you add this kind of a behavioral dynamic, it makes it even more complex, right? So I think this this size makes it very clear that this is an audience you cannot ignore. At the same time, I think what we've also seen, and personally I've sort of read a fair bit about it. And what comes to me is, again, there are some. Let me place some more statistics here, and then talk for a minute on what that actually implies. Right, 95% of this generation owns a smartphone. Right, 8 hours daily is spent online at different points in time by these audiences. Right. 87% of the news comes from social platforms in one form or the other, right? And they spend almost 30% of the audience spends almost 2 hours a day on YouTube and Instagram and other social kind of a platform, right? So if you look at it, it seems to sort of come out that this generation is digital always. I think we used to say this word digital first, digital first. I think with this generation, I don't think you can say that anymore. They're digital always. Physical is probably an afterthought in a lot of things that happen, right? And I think in that context, what also seems to therefore come out is that because they are always on, because for them sharing is part of their psyche, right? And social connections and forming and maintaining social connections is super critical in terms of the way they live their lives. That obviously has a lot of implications on how they behave, what they consume, how they get entertained, all of that, right? And I think today, therefore, what I want to maybe as a start hear from each of you as maybe sort of quick opening thoughts is, what do you think are the fundamental differences, right? One or two core differences in terms of this audience or this demographic category as compared to the earlier generations. And two, why do you think this difference seems to exist and seems to be so stark, right? And Piyush, maybe we can start with you and get some perspectives around that.
Thanks, Piyush. You turn it on.
Can you hear me? Okay, fair enough. We need to really make a lot of noise given what's happening there. No, I think a great opening point, Girish, about what's happening with Gen Z and something that we at Router are witnessing pretty much every day, which is that we are basically a content platform. So we are a technology content platform where people come to consume different kind of gaming content. And what we have seen over a period of time is we started with live streams about 2.5, 3 years back. Then came the videos, and now the reels are taking off a lot. So what we have seen is that, and it started with something that we used to talk about 3 years back, that gaming is going to be a future, and we used to read so much about why gaming is going to take everything forward. But what we have seen is that this generation, they want to do everything around gaming. So for them, the reference of life is, what are they playing or what are they watching? So either they are playing a game or they are watching somebody play a game. And even for me, who's above 40 right now, and for me to see my 7-year-old son consume gaming content and to build his life around it, what I've observed as a father and as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's been working with my rest of the team to build Router, is that people have just switched from one place to the other. It hasn't that any habits have changed or people haven't really become something that we don't know. It's just that they find their comfort in the world of gaming because the emotions that is coming in, the adrenaline rush, the knowledge, everything that is coming in is actually coming from games. And therefore, we can choose to, but we can't ignore and can't deny them the world of gaming. And we need to find ways in creating a balance. And that's what we at Router are trying to do, which is that we are responsible for content and we want to ensure good content reaches. But that's my opening point of view.
It's an interesting point you made, and I think at least my hypothesis has always been that, people are still doing similar things. The platforms they do it on is what is evolving, right?
Yeah.
So Facebook gives way to Insta, Hotstar gives way to a game streaming platform. So it's people are still doing a lot of the same stuff, but they want to do it in very, very different ways and different modes, right? So fair point. Dr. Sathe, from your perspective, I think, just again, opening remarks to what I said, right? What makes this generation different, and one is the difference so stark, and two, what do you think are the triggers which is causing some of these? I think let's
Yeah. Thank you, Girish. Now, this is my first time to be on this side of the table. As a mental health professional, I'm always on the opposite side of the table dealing with the impact of virtual world onto the generation. Now, coming to Gen Z, I think uh, till last generation, like Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Y, there was a gradual kind of a progression, and like a relay race, there was something common, some distance traveled together between the last generation and the next generation. But with Gen Z, it's altogether a different kind of a scenario where there is a clear cut disconnect. It's like there are two different, there is no commonly shared platform with the previous generation. One thing I feel is the earlier generation, or Gen Y or Gen X, Gen Y especially got introduced to this world, virtual world. But when Gen Z came into this world, this virtual world was already existing. And like every child has that innate drive for environmental mastery, so Gen Z has picked it up like never before. And it is again an innate tendency for every child to master the environment. So it had already become a part of child's ecosystem. So Gen Z having an iPad probably from day one or day two of its existence, and so getting the mastery over that is very common. And as I said, there is a disconnect. So we really will have to think about Gen Z more seriously and more in depth when it comes to offering anything to them, because they have already mastered what earlier generation has been struggling with. So this is something which I think we need to keep in mind while offering anything to them. There are 2, 3 features I would like to tell. Is one, as I said, because of the environmental mastery, they have already gone ahead. B is like they want immediate gratification. Anything that they do and they want immediate gratification, which an environment or an ecosystem couldn't offer to the earlier generations. So here there is a possibility. Second important thing which we need to consider is the concentration span, which has gone down remarkably because of the novelty. So they are more of novelty seekers than ever before, because they are not able to. The moment they master that, any task, their interest in that task goes down very fast. And as I said, they don't take much time to master any task. So these two things I think we need to keep in mind when we are thinking about designing anything for them.
Got it. No, very, very interesting points. And I think, Amit, this sort of leads in very well to a brand-related thinking, right? Because I think these are the challenges that you would be grappling with daily. But I do want to ask this question. Is this difference so fundamental, right? Are we, like Dr. Sathe said, right? Every other generation carried on a lot of things from the previous generation, whereas this generation doesn't seem to have that kind of a rollover effect, so to say. Is that something you see as a brand professional, and what are the kind of challenges you grapple with daily for this?
No, absolutely. So quite valid points here, and I'm, before even I start speaking, let me just say I'm no expert in Gen Z, because to be very honest, in our profession we keep saying इनको समझना बच्चों का खेल नहीं. We're still deciphering this generation and figuring out what exactly works for them, and for us this is bread and butter, right? We need to connect with them. But if you look at the starkness, I think there are enough and more starkness there.
Sorry, if you don't mind, can you just lift your mic up here? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
One very peculiar thing where the previous generation, or our generation for that matter, is we used to look up to youngsters. We would want to do exactly what they're doing. We would want to wear what they're wearing, eat the way they used to eat, sit the way they used to sit. If you look at this generation, they are exiting Facebook because this generation is sitting on Facebook and I don't want to be there. Their, their entire thing, their whole language is different. There is that vibes and the feels and a different language to it and a different way of communicating just because they want an identity which is completely separate. They want a unique space, they have a voice, and I think that makes them and sets them truly apart from the generation that we're talking about in the past. Also, in the previous generations, there were enough and more do's and don'ts. We were told, yes, this, no, that, possible that, not possible that. There are no forbiddens here. And what we understand when we trying to communicate with them is the more different you are, the more unique you are, the more edgy, so to say, you are. Of course, that should make sense to them. Don't, one peculiar thing about them, which is very beautiful, is that everyone has a purpose. They have a very, very strong purpose. Now, the purpose might not only be about doing good things. It could be slapstick comedy entertainment. But I think they have a very strong purpose. They know why they are doing what they're doing. Most of us didn't know why we were studying and then ended up in a profession just by chance. And these guys know it very, very clearly. And like Piyush, even I have a son, and he surprises me every day. But yeah, those are my
Got
points.
it. No, fair. Santosh, from your perspective, right? Sorry, let me speak a little louder. From your perspective, a lot of this, when we talk about Gen Z behavior and Gen Z passions, tend to culminate in gaming in a lot of ways and gamification, right? And and that has evolved in a lot of ways to be the number one, engagement model for an entertainment model for youngsters. Just wanted your take as somebody who's part of the gaming ecosystem. How do you see this audience base, both in terms of its potential and in terms of its challenges?
Hi, everybody. Very good afternoon. Thank you for the question, Girish. So, to put things in perspective, right? So, every 10, 15 years, you always see there is a change in ecosystem, right? Or there are new things coming in. So, think about it like this: with the introduction of technology, right? So, India tend to seems to be technology-friendly company, right? That even though we are playing a catch-up. So what happened with the introduction of 4G and with the introduction of smartphones, right? So it gets very easy for a youngster to get on to see the world, right? Previously, if anybody has a PC or a laptop, that was the more accurate way to address or see the world. So now everything is in our own hand. So everything is in our own hand, right? So that way, what happened is that the 4G and the introduction of 5G has given a lot of strength for us, especially for the Indian youngsters, to get to know the world, right? And that including gaming as well. So I believe during the pandemic time, right, most of the people probably got bored and they started to see see people what's happening on YouTube, what's happening on Netflix, or what's happening on social media, right? And what's happening in gaming as well, right? And the people want some kind of an entertainment, and that entertainment can be seen through gaming as well, right? That's how they started consuming data, and that's the reason the rise in esports over the last 4 or 5 years has been pretty significant. That has given the rise to so many companies in esports sector, right? Even the Piyush went on the same journey as well, I believe, isn't it? Right? It gives a lot. It gives a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs like us to explore and get them what they really want. Right? So that's the reason we are training esports athletes, where a company like Piyush is giving us an opportunity to stream on his platform and showcase our talent. Right? And that's what the Gen Z community is actually consuming it, and it is giving us. Of course, it helps us develop monetization. It helps us create jobs, revenue, and extra opportunities for us to grow this community from the niche market to a developed market.
I can't. It's an esport tournament there. Actually, Santosh, let me continue with you, and Piyush, I think it'll be good if you can also add on. Let me continue with the theme of gaming for a bit. Uh, so games have been around like forever, right? But with the way this generation seems to consume gaming, uh, two questions, right? One, what do you think is different in the way in the way this generation consumes gaming as compared to, say, Gen Y or any of the previous generations? And two, given some of the behavioral statistics around some of these some of this generation, do gaming companies and gaming ecosystem players need to look at this audience differently in terms of what do you offer them, what kind of games, what kind of content, how do you distribute to them, how do you reach out to them? Just to understand some perspectives on that. Both of you, it would be good if you can.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. So what we've seen, so there are a few things that we learned over the last few months. First and foremost, for them, gaming is not just a game, but a lifestyle or and basically it's the center of their content. So they are not just playing a game, they are watching game content, they are buying merchandise, they're talking about it. Social networks are basically around it. They are on Discord. They're just spread across all over and therefore it is not just limited to playing game, it is about the life around game.
Yeah.
And for us at Router, and I'm sure for everybody, we realize that if you just fulfill one need, then you'll become obsolete much faster than anybody else. So you need to look at them constantly every 60, 90 days and see what's happening there. The second thing we have seen, and something very interesting, is if any one of you are on Twitch, you would have noticed that over the last 2 quarters, the most popular game on Twitch is actually not a game. It's a segment called Just Chatting. So Just Chatting has always been around on Twitch for a long time. But lately what we have observed is that it's that segment which is getting more viewership than games. And the observation here is that it's not that people are not playing game or watching game. It's just that people want to go beyond games to learn about the streamer, the esports teams, the esports players. So we also launched IRL, in real life content, and we also launched Just Chatting, and it is growing by some 300x every month. Like, people are just loving to learn about who these gamers are, who these esports players are. So everything that Santosh and everybody in esports is doing or streamers are doing, their life is much more valuable than just the game they are playing. You know, their lifestyle, the cars they are driving. There's a gamer called Lokesh Gamer. He's on Router. You go to his Instagram, he talks about fast cars. And there are like few gamers who are just talking about fast cars and doing that. So it's a monumental change. That's what I'm saying. It's not just gaming. It's everything around gaming, which is now very relatable to this generation. Yeah.
Santosh?
Think about it like this. Anything that has a revenue opportunity, people like to tend to try something new, right? When it comes to gaming also, right, there are casual gamers, but people who are really good at it, it could be a way for esports, or it could be a way for streaming on a platform, right? A trade for a streamer is very different from a trade from an esports player, right? The player could be of mechanically on a particular game, he's very good at it. But as a streamer, you have to be an entertainer, right? You are like a public figure. You are basically entertaining your audience from day one, and you are building your own fan base out of nothing, right? You might have seen Mr. Beast, right? He's been doing content for years. Lokesh Gamer as well, right? They are doing so. What's happening is that, see, they are usually getting motivated, and with the amount of backing that is coming from the streaming platforms to support these kind of people, and at the same time, you as an Gen Z audience are getting attracted to that, right? So you are getting to see, for example, before it was cricket. Cricket is a religion in India, right? There is no doubt about it. But today, if at all we are looking at it, I'm not saying that the audience for cricket is down, because I'm still a fan, right? But at the same time, people today, they want more content, right? Other than just cricket. So the content creators, they are not just focusing about the game itself, they're also focusing on showing who they are outside of the game, right? That's when they are becoming like a lifestyle creators.
Got it.
Where they are just influencing people. Hey, if you are a creator, you could be just like me.
Got it.
Previously, we used to see the role models like, hey, I want to be a Sachin Tendulkar, or I want to become, be myself like a movie star. I want to get this haircut, right? So we are just influenced by actors, actresses, or politicians, or cricketers, for example, in India. Now that has changed even for gamers, right? You see gamers have a crazy hairstyle, right? Or they put colors on their hair, or they dye their hair properly, and that's a trend. Hey, I have Jonathan's hairstyle, right? Or I have Spray God's hairstyle, right? So it's these kids. I cannot simply say kids. These stars, right? They're actively changing the dynamics of the market, and that also helps brands like Dentsu, for example, here, to reach out. If they want to reach out to the Gen Z audience, how can they get there, right? So it is actually a change in model, that there are variety of influencers today across the world, and in India also it is going the same way, where there are like Instagram influencers, YouTube influencers, right? And there are influencers who are just very specific to a particular game, or they are like influencers who are gamers, but they focus more on their in real life content.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very, very, very relevant point, and I think that's what the last bit both of you actually spoke about, right? You're talking about in real life, and you're talking about people sharing and talking, and how now those people themselves have become influencers and celebrities, right? I think that is one huge, behavioral pattern when it comes to Gen Z users, is the want and need for social connections, and the want and need to share, right? It's not enough that I'm connected and I'm following others. I want people to know what's happening with me, right? And respond to me, right? So that need for social connections and to share seems to be a very fundamental characteristic here. And I would really like to hear both of your perspectives on, how do you see this, number one? What, to a certain extent, what triggers this, right? Because it's not that it's not that social media was not there, but the amount that gets shared by this generation is very, very different. So just a little bit of understanding on that may be useful, and Dr. Sathe, maybe you can add on to that. And Amit, maybe a little bit from a brand's perspective, therefore, right? If that's the kind of behavior that exists with this audience, what do you do? What's the right way to reach out to those users, right? And can you continue to follow some of the traditional models? Maybe Dr. Sathe, you can start with some perspectives on this. So I think you can start.
Yeah. So whenever we have to understand any generation or any individual, there are three dimensions to it: nature, nurture, and neighborhood. Okay, there are certain things which are a part of a nature, fundamentally applicable to all of us, which are there for zillions of years. So need to belong and need to connect is very fundamental, for one simple reason, that we as a human race are most ill-equipped for self-protection. So our chances of survival increased only when we were in groups. So we are, in that sense, tribal in nature. So need to connect is very fundamental, and our brain is hardwired for that, like for ages. When I said nature, nurture, and neighborhood, what I'm trying to communicate is nature, like what happens inside the brain, the way brain responds to, and the way brain is hardwired for certain things is still the same. So fundamentals still remain the same, but nurturance has changed. Neighborhood has changed drastically for Gen Z especially. As Amit said, that there were certain do's and don'ts and some restrictions because parenting and everything was clear-cut a game of authority. Okay, now we know that authoritarian parenting or teaching doesn't work. So we have gone to the other side of the pendulum where probably we have become over-permissive. And then there are many issues, but this is not a platform to talk about that. But let us understand that there are certain things, especially when it comes to, Gen Z has a strong desire to be creative, to be happy and joyful. Okay, now that's applicable for every human being and has been there for generations together. But what has happened is the hardwiring of brain. See, our brain, pleasure and pain are co-located in brain. They are processed in the same area of the brain. Okay, and that was designed, hardwired for scarcity and ever-present threat. That hardwiring was never for abundance. Okay, so now there is an abundance in the neighborhood, in the nurturance. So immediate gratification or getting happiness immediately available at the fingertips. Okay, pleasure is not an issue, but without pursuit of pleasure, getting the pleasure is tilting that balance in the brain to a great extent. And that's where is the flip side of this generation. So this Gen Z has already started talking about their next generation, because they are really worried about the impacts and the negative impacts they have had because of this toppled balance. So that is something I think we need to. It's more about being balanced in the world of overindulgence.
Got it.
That is something that we need to look at, because otherwise, as a mental health professional, what we see as an addiction is going to be a common phenomena. And when, like, we all know that worst thing about addiction is what you feel as an act of freedom is actually losing a freedom at every step. And that's what Gen Z is more concerned about, that they are losing that sense of agency. So they are getting in some way, but in real life situation they are. And the more they go towards, more this balance keeps on tilting towards pain, because anyways, rather than... So these are the things they are really worried about, concerned about, and not only that, they have started taking actions for it. So that also we need to think about, that how do they really maintain that balance in this world of overindulgence.
Understand. No, fair points actually. And Amit, like I said, your perspective, because ultimately this whole the sharing and the social connections can work brilliantly well to to reach out, engage, trigger massive virality and word of mouth. But it's also got a flip side. And at a very, very basic example, you look at some of these boycott movie campaigns that happen and the kind of impact it tends to have, which is fast, right? It's literally overnight you see something picking up, and people making a decision. I don't want to see this, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to engage with this brand, right? And clearly there is also a sense of expectation from this audience saying, I want brands to be honest to me, I want clear communication, what they stand for. So there's a whole bunch of complexity that happens around this thing around the social connections also, right? So how as a brand professional do you look at this?
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You can very well use it to your advantage and ride high. Very well easily fall because you never know what becomes big and what's taken in a certain way. But the truth over here is that the brands are riding the wave, but they've also realized that you're talking to a generation which wants you to be transparent. So you don't talk purpose with me, don't talk goodness with me unless you're doing something. You can be all fun, flashy, mindless. That's fine. That could be the purpose of the brand. But if you just try to do that 2% good just for that CSR and pretend to be all good, they will absolutely see you through and make sure that the world knows about it. That's even more dangerous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword there. But having said that, I think it's brought in that inner understanding within brands to say, let's talk what we mean rather than just talk it out.
Yeah.
And we can fool the world, which can't happen anymore.
Got it.
And you have a chit which says time's over.
Absolutely right. So I think this really means we need to wind up. But let me actually do closing remarks from each of you. One great opportunity that each of you see with engaging with these audiences, and one when concern or drawback that you see, right? And maybe Santosh, you can start off. Sorry, I'll repeat. Sorry about that. I'm saying closing remarks. One opportunity that you see, with this demographic, and one negative or concern that you have, that sort of keeps you awake, so to say.
Right. I think I'll start with the drawbacks, right? So
yeah, and now I have to ask you to come closer. Sorry about that.
Well, I'll start with the drawback first, right? I think most gamers, the challenge is that they don't tend to sleep well, or they don't tend to sleep on time, right? That's the biggest issue this generation is facing today. Being an esports owner, I have seen my players playing till morning 5 o'clock, right? They get up at 3 in the afternoon and they start to play, and they play till 5, 6. Even though we have rules, we have written explicitly stating that, hey, you should not be doing this, but still they don't care, right? Because they love to play in the night because it's very calm for them. And that's one of the disadvantages that I see. But it comes to advantageous situations. See, India is in a very, we are in our golden years today. That's what I would like to say at the moment, right? So the reason is that we have one of the largest, youngest population in the world, right? And the opportunities that are hitting our doors are way more. It's just that if you are a founder, or if you are someone who is interested to invest in companies, you need to have an eye for what is really something that you want to invest in, what you're passionate about, invest on those, and I'm sure that you can become a good entrepreneur.
Got it. Great. Amit?
So I'll keep it short. I think the good thing, the great thing about this generation is that they know what's available for them, and they're tapping it completely and fully. They're much more aware than any other generation ever. The downside is that there's a possibility of an early burnout. There's too much happening in their lives too soon, and the worry, honestly, from my end is probably a early burnout rather than being alone.
Fair point. Dr. Sathe?
Actually, let us look for a win-win situation. Let us design games which will also make them more equipped, make them more resilient, because that is what is going to be required in their future. So let us think about that, and let us think about profit not at the cost of their mental health. Because they are going to, as I said, Gen Z has already started thinking about it. And just to give you an example in half a minute, Ima Lemke is one Gen Z girl in the US. She has started a movement called Log Off Movement, because she herself went through mental health issues, and that movement is really catching up a momentum to a great extent. So these are the things that the Gen Z is going to pose before us. And we will really have to address them, and we will have to really look at their well-being. So let them develop that high frustration tolerance. Let there be something in that part of design where they get frustrated, expectedly or unexpectedly, for explicable or unexplicable reasons. Let there be uncertainty. Let them get frustrated, deal with that frustration, and develop high frustration tolerance.
Very, very interesting. Piyush,
I think most has been said, but from my perspective, I think through gaming or through a lot of things which are happening around us, it's a great time for us to bring Gen Z closer to our culture. Perhaps a good part of last generation missed out the culture part. And I think with new games and new things that can happen around it, we can do that. And I think from a disadvantage or a con perspective, I'm quite scared about the time they're spending on gaming, or for that matter, everything else. So while it's good for all businesses like ours, but I'm sure it's gonna come very soon to us saying that we need to put some. So we are doing few things to put time limits and all. But I think if we don't control, it might just grow beyond addiction, which we will have to handle later on. So I think that's one thing we need to be care about.
Fair point. No, great. I think thank you so much, guys. For your insights on this, and I think this is a topic that can really go on and on, because all said and done, none of us are Gen Z by a long shot, and we probably are grasping at straws here a little bit, but hopefully also based on what we've seen, there are some learnings which organizations can really use as things evolve, and these things will keep continuing to evolve, right? So I think that's that is it for now. Though I don't know if I have time. I can't see anybody there. I don't know if I have time for any last questions, or should we wind up? No, I think the audience understands Gen Z better than us, so no questions looks like. So great. Thank you so much, and thanks so much to all of you. Really nice talking to you guys. Thank you.